Some of you may have seen the short clip I posted from Vancouver International Airport, and that is a large fish tank in the center of the airport. When I saw that, I thought it was quite strange. I was wondering, what could these animals have done in a previous life in order that in this life they should spend out all their time in a fish tank in an airport? It seemed quite strange to me. And the only thing I could think of was that they must have been zookeepers or something in a previous lifetime. And it's not necessarily the case that they will be suffering just because they're in a fish tank. I mean, they could be treated quite well. But there are some previous causes and conditions that brought them to live out their lives in a fish tank in an airport. And so they could have been zookeepers. And this got me thinking about the teachings on karma, cause and effect. And so today I thought I'd talk a little bit about these 10 non-virtues, or these 10 negative acts that are taught in the Buddha Dharma, and specifically in this text, which is the words of my perfect teacher that was written by Patrul Rinpoche. So in that text, then it teaches of 10 non-virtues, 3 associated with body, 4 associated with speech, and 3 associated with mind. One thing we have to understand that is that primary or principal among these are the non-virtues of mind. Now, something that many Westerners have a difficulty with is understanding how it is that karma, cause and effect can work. We sort of feel like there has to be some kind of mystical force, that stretches from this lifetime into future lifetimes and causes us to have particular experiences. But really, if you look at the higher vehicles of the Buddha Dharma, then principal amongst this triad of body, speech and mind is mind. And what is taught is that the outer appearances themselves are illusory, they're not real, and what they do is they arise out of our karmic perception. And so in the Buddha Dharma, at least, then what is taught is that we project our experiences, and these are projected out of our habitual tendencies, this way that we've conditioned ourselves to think. So what are these 3 physical non-virtues? Well, those are killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. Now, amongst these 3, then we have the most difficulty with the teachings on sexual misconduct, because we don't see there to be anything wrong with promiscuity or engaging in sexual acts in general. So specifically then, if you're a monastic and you've taken a vow of celibacy, it's seen to be negative to engage in any kind of sexual activity. But in general then, we can think of sexual misconduct to be those acts, for example, to force yourself upon someone else or to cheat on your partner, this sort of thing. Now, killing is taught to be the worst of the negative acts, the very worst of the negative acts, and the result of this is taught to be rebirth in the lowest of the low realms, which is what we call hell. And I know most Westerners have a problem with the idea of hell. They think that hell is a story that was invented in order to force people to behave themselves. And what is described as hellish experiences are, for example, being boiled alive in a hot cauldron, or sort of being made to drink molten iron, that sort of thing. But what we can see is that people in our normal world have these kind of experiences. There are those who are the victims of gang violence, who are the victims of the drug cartels, and they're tortured in the most horrible ways. So we don't have to think about some kind of a realm beneath the earth, sort of realm of fire, a hellish realm with hell beings who are torturing us. We just have to look at the ordinary, mundane world to see that right now there are people who are undergoing hellish experiences. So when it comes to killing, then there's a lot of debate about this. For example, in the modern Christian tradition, many people don't use "thou shalt not kill," they say "thou shalt not murder." And this is to accommodate for example, capital punishment. It's seen to be okay to kill someone who is a convict, somebody who has done something really horrible and nasty, then we see it to be okay to kill them. Likewise, some people say that it's okay to kill animals. For example, we kill animals in order to eat them, but it's not okay to kill a human being. But in the Buddha Dharma at least, then killing itself is seen to be a natural non-virtue. So whether you kill an animal, whether you kill a human being, whether you kill somebody on death row, then they're all equally negative. It is negative to take a life. Now, with each of the non-virtues, there is an associated virtue. And in the case of killing, then that virtue is the act of protecting life, so saving life. This is a very strong tradition in the East, especially in Tibet. And they have something called life release that I have spoken about previously. And that's where we take an animal that is destined for the slaughterhouse and we release them into the wild. The second of the physical non-virtues is the non-virtue of stealing, right? We use our body to take the possessions of others, things that are not given to us. And the virtue associated with the negativity of stealing is to give in generosity. And what would be the virtue associated with the non-virtue of sexual misconduct? And that is having pure conduct or having chaste conduct. But as I said before, then in the West, we don't like this idea of chaste conduct. And we see people who keep this kind of chaste or religious conduct to be somehow kind of prudish, old-fashioned. And we don't really see there to be anything wrong with being promiscuous. But a lot of this has to do with our kind of modern idea of free love. And we like the liberty of engaging in any kind of sexual activity. But the basis of this really is that we have very strong desire. And this is the key point in the Buddha Dharma. The reason why us falling under sway of our desires is so negative is that this kind of rampant desire is what stops us from attaining kind of mental equilibrium. So this ability to rest in tranquility. It's the analogy is that it's a kind of coolness where we cool down our hatred and our desire until we rest in a kind of state of peace and tranquility. And by fueling the flames of our desires, what we do is we counteract that ability to be at rest or be peaceful. And so somebody who habituates themselves to promiscuity finds it very difficult to get by in life unless they can fulfill the objects of their desire. If they can attain this kind of blissful experiences, then it can be quite upsetting. It kind of drives them crazy a little bit. And then we come to this second category, and that is the 4 non-virtues of speech. And the first of these is lying. And we can all accept that lying is a negativity. We see it to be a negative thing to do, but there are circumstances, for example, where we think it's okay to lie. For example, we tell little children lies in order to get them to behave. So the act itself is seen to be negative, but especially if you're lying with a kind of negative motivation, you're trying to deceive somebody in order to gain or profit from that situation. The second non-virtue of speech is sowing discord. That's divisive speech. That's where we try to set people against each other. We try to separate people. And the associated virtue that goes along with this is this ability to bring people together, to use our speech to make people harmonious. So you have people who counsel partners who are splitting up, for example. And so this ability to make people come together is a virtue, and this tendency or this wish to divide others through your speech is seen to be a great negativity. And especially if that is dividing people in a sangha. So you've got students of a teacher, and then you try to separate them, you try to make them fight. And this is seen to be an extremely negative thing to do. But there's a great danger that we do engage in this activity, because many people in spiritual communities are trying to better their own position. They're trying to curry favor from the Lama. They want to be seen to be a special individual. And in order to do this, in order to stand out amongst the crowd, then they try to make others look bad. And this is very common. I've seen this in spiritual communities in the West quite a lot. There's many people who engage in this activity. And it's almost as if they're doing this without even knowing that they're doing it. It's like a natural instinct. We have this wish to better ourselves in the eyes of others. And so in order to achieve that, then we try to make others look bad. And so you should be very careful about this. And then this third negativity associated with speech is harsh words. And this isn't just swearing. This is using our speech to try to harm the minds of others, to try to upset people. For example, putting people down and denigrating them. Now, it would seem that many spiritual teachers are doing this in a way by criticizing their students. But you could be doing this out of the wish to better someone, to make them improve themselves, to make them try harder. So there's a kind of gray area here. But in general, if you're saying something just to be nasty or to be mean to somebody, insulting them because of their looks, etc., and then this is what we call harsh words or harsh speech. And the opposite to this, the virtue associated with this non-virtue of harsh speech, is to have pleasant speech, to speak kindly to others. And this final non-virtue that is associated with speech is this non-virtue of meaningless talk. And in general, we don't see this to be a problem, but it is something that we engage in a lot. It's probably one of the most common forms of non-virtue of speech. And that's because we like to gossip a lot and we like to talk about totally meaningless things. It's a kind of distraction. And it's very dangerous because we waste our time doing this. Not only that, but we can cause a lot of discord within society by engaging in kind of a lot of random and meaningless speech. And the opposite to this is to engage in meaningful speech. So, for example, teaching the Dharma or teaching the spiritual path is a meaningful way of using your speech. But in general, what we need to do is we need to talk less. I mean, people don't take us seriously if we just chitter-chatter all the time and say lots of meaningless things. They see us to be kind of flippant. And those people who are kind of quiet and strong get a lot of respect from other people. This third category is the non-virtues associated with mind, mental non-virtues. And the first of these is this covetous mind. It's this desire to have that which belongs to others. And we're really sort of prone to this negativity in the modern world. And it's because we see so much about other people's lives. We know everything about the life stories of the rich and famous, actors, musicians, and also royalty. And we kind of resent them for their wealth and their well-being. And we kind of desire to have that which they have. In general, it's difficult for us to see how damaging this is. But as the Buddha taught, then one should be easily satisfied and have few desires. And this covetous mind is kind of the opposite of that. By seeing the wealth of others and desiring to have that for ourselves, then we kind of make ourselves very uneasy and small-minded. We can never be happy because we always think we need something else. It's a big danger in the modern world, as I said, because in every magazine, on the internet, on movies and television, then we see everything that's going on in other people's lives. We see the richest man in the world and that he can have everything that he wants, yachts and spaceships and that sort of thing. And it makes us very desirous. And it kind of disturbs or unsettles our mind. And we need to create this mental stillness in order to make spiritual progress. And so, of course, if we think we haven't got what we want, and we don't want other things that other people have, then we'll never be happy. We'll never be able to settle down. And so there are these three gates of karmic action. That's body, speech, and mind. And it is mind's principle amongst these. And it's because it is our mental outlook that shapes the way we perceive the world. It's the strongest form of karma, so you have to be careful about that. And what is the opposite of a covetous mind? Well, that's the wish for others to have what they need and what they desire. Sort of rejoicing in the wealth and well-being of others. If somebody becomes rich and famous, instead of being jealous, then we should rejoice. We should think how wonderful it is that they have everything that they desire. This will also give us a kind of mental stability and tranquility in our own minds, because we'll no longer resent others. In general, it's taught to be very difficult to identify jealousy, this sort of being jealous of others and what they have. If you become uncomfortable when others do well, or that they achieve what they want, or get praise from others, that's a sign you have this kind of naturally jealous mind. And that's associated with covetousness. So what you need to do is rejoice. And rejoicing makes you a very happy and open-minded person. And it's a very virtuous act as well. The second of these mental non-virtues is maliciousness, having this malicious mind, this kind of evil mind that wishes ill on others. And this is a great danger in the modern day because we've become very polarized. No one can listen to each other's point of view, and we see many people as enemies. And we kind of rejoice when they have a downfall. We'll see some famous celebrity who we resent, and then when everything goes wrong, we kind of rejoice. And that's this evil mind. It's this mind that wishes ill on others. And this is very, very dangerous for us, because maliciousness makes somebody not a very nice person. And likewise, it will make you experience very negative things in the future. You'll have this negative karmic projection, and because of that, then you yourself will experience great hardship. The opposite of this malicious mind is to have a benevolent mind. That's the wish for others to only experience joy and happiness and to be free of suffering. And really this is the sort of cornerstone or the key point of the Mahayana Dharma, this bodhicitta. And so maliciousness, or having an evil mind, is the exact opposite of bodhicitta, right? And what we need to achieve enlightenment, and that is if you believe what is taught in the Mahayana, is we need bodhicitta. We need this love and compassion for everyone. And that's not just our loved ones, our dear ones in our family, that's also our enemies. And so these days, there's a lot of war going on all over the world. And we see some people to be aggressors. And we kind of see it to be black and white. But even this desire for your enemy to fail or to suffer is very negative. And we find that difficult to understand. And so we can all accept that we have the right to defend ourselves. It's the same in war, and it's the same when we're being attacked by our enemies. The problem is if we develop this maliciousness. For example, we see our enemy, they've mistreated us, and then in return, we decide that it's okay if we mistreat them. And this is very negative. It's very wrong. I mean, you should defend yourselves, but at the same time, you should always keep your own integrity and not mistreat others. And it's very easy to mistreat others when you look down upon them, when you dehumanize them. This happened to the Jews in World War II. They were dehumanized, and then people thought it was okay to mistreat them. But it's not okay to mistreat anybody. I mean, if somebody is brought up in a negative culture, and so they're kind of brainwashed or they're conditioned to do negative things, then in a way they're kind of a victim of their circumstances. If you're a Mahayana Buddhist, then you should always have love and compassion for all beings, and that includes your enemies. And so this is a great danger in the modern world because there's so much war, you know. And if we think the situation is black and white, then there's always this danger that we will use those same negative tactics against our enemy and that it will be okay. It's kind of like payback. But that's not the kind of payback we need to think about. In the Buddha Dharma, we have to think about karma. Karma, cause and effect. And so that means if I engage in negativity, doesn't matter what the reason was, then I will have to experience the consequences in the future. So it's not going to be something that benefits me if I act just as bad as them. And so you should avoid this at all costs. And what is the opposite of having a malicious mind? Well, that's having a benevolent mind. And as I said before, this is the actual cause for awakening or enlightenment, is bodhicitta. The third negativity associated with the mind is the negativity of wrong view. And so this is the topic I was covering in the previous video on the 5 wrong views. And one of them is perverse view. And specifically here, we're talking about the view of the extremes. So we're talking about these views of existence and non-existence. Really, although for us, this doesn't seem to be so important. For example, we don't think that having a theistic view ultimately is a negative thing. And it's true that in the short term, having a theistic view will bring about positive consequences. And for example, if I believe in God, and God taught that I should engage in virtue, and I have faith in that, then I will naturally engage in virtue. And as a consequence of engaging in virtue, then I will be reborn in positive realms or divine realms. But this is only temporary. Ultimately, we need to achieve awakening. Final awakening is based on this middle way view, this view that does not fall to these 2 extremes of existence and non-existence. But as I said before, this is an extremely difficult topic. If we're honest with ourselves, it's almost impossible for us to have correct view. And that's because we don't even understand what it means to have this view that is free from the 2 extremes. But I've talked about this a lot in previous videos, so I won't need to go into it in any detail at this time. What you have to understand is the opposite of this wrong view or perverse view is correct view. And this correct view is the view of the middle way. Now, there's this wonderful quote in the words of my perfect teacher, and it kind of sums up the way we should think about karma, cause and effect. And it says, basically, if you want to know what you did in a previous lifetime, then just look at the way you are now. So for example, if I have a lot of illness in my body, you know, if I'm a small-minded and angry person, well, that's based on my previous karma actions. And likewise, then it's taught, if you want to know what you're going to experience in the future, then look at your current actions. So look at what you do in this life. You know, if I'm somebody who works in an abattoir, then I can see that in future lifetimes I'm going to have a lot of problems because I engage in killing all day long. That's my profession. So then we need to ask, in what way will our karmic actions affect us in future times? And those are karmic actions that are virtuous and non-virtuous. Well, there's different ways of looking at this, but there's kind of 2 primary ways of looking at the results of our negative acts. and that is the experiences that are similar to the cause and the actions that are similar to the cause. So what are these experiences that are similar to the cause? Well, for example, if we engage in killing, then that means in the future lifetime we may have a very short life. And even if we don't have a short life, then we could have a life that is plagued with a lot of illness. For example, we may get terminal cancer. And some people, for example, then they die almost immediately after they were born. And that means they have a very, very short life. And it's taught that if you have this very short life, that's a consequence of having taken the lives of others. And that could be animals as well, right? It doesn't have to be human beings. And then if we engage in the virtue of preserving life, that means in this lifetime we'll have a very long life, and not only that, but our life will be free of illness. Next, then there is this negativity of stealing. So what is an example of the experiences that are similar to the cause when it comes to stealing? Well, that means that we will suffer poverty. Not only that, but we will be plagued by kind of bandits and robbers. We'll find that people are always trying to steal from us, or always trying to give us trouble. And that's because in previous lifetimes, then we ourselves have stolen from others. So if you don't want to be the victim of theft, and you want to be wealthy, then you should avoid stealing or taking what is not given in this lifetime. And likewise, if we engage in generosity, then it's taught that in future lifetimes we will have great resources, wealth and resources. We find that we always have what we need. We often wonder, don't we? We think, well, how come it is that somebody else can be wealthy and get by without even applying themselves, but I work very, very hard and it seems like I never have enough. I never have enough money for the things I want. And what the Buddha taught is that's because of our previous actions. And so if you want to experience well-being, if you want to be wealthy, then what you should do is you should engage in generosity. The third non-virtue of body is the non-virtue of sexual misconduct. And as I said before, this is a difficult topic in the West because we kind of enjoy our promiscuity. We don't see it to be a negative thing. What is taught to be an experience that is similar to the cause if you are kind of promiscuous or if you cheat on your partner, and that is that you find it difficult to find a good partner in this lifetime. So an attractive partner or somebody who's harmonious. And not only that, if you do find a partner, then it's likely that they will cheat on you. So this is an experience that is similar to the cause. So I guess if you are kind of very faithful person and you keep very kind of pure conduct, then in future lifetimes you will get a partner who is very attractive, but not only that, is somebody who is very loyal to you. Then we have experiences associated with the causes of negativities that come from speech. For example, we lie. And what happens when we lie is that in future times, then we find that people are always trying to deceive or trick us. And this is something we don't like. We wonder why we get scammed on the telephone or scammed on the internet. And basically this happens, if you believe what the Buddha taught, because in previous lifetimes we were deceptive. So you should always try to avoid lying. And if you engage in only speaking honestly, then what you find is that you don't encounter these difficulties. Not only that, that you will get respect from others. They won't denigrate you or look down on you. They won't try to deceive you. The second negativity associated with speech is that of sowing discord, so trying to split people up. And the result of this, or the experience that is similar to the cause, is that you will have difficulty with your entourage, it says, servants and that sort of thing. That sounds a bit old-fashioned. It's not really like that for us. But for example, if you were a boss of a company, then you might find that your employees have no respect for you and they're always fighting with each other. And this is a consequence of you yourself having split up other people. And so if you want to experience harmonious relationships in the workplace, with your kind of employees, then what you should do is you should always try to keep people harmonious. You should always try to sow harmony rather than sow discord. The third negativity associated with speech is the negativity of harsh speech. So that's where you sort of put people down, you insult them, you call them ugly or fat, that sort of thing. Likewise, if you do this, then you yourself will get derision and insult from others and experience a lot of harshness in other people's speech. You will not experience pleasant speech. And so there are those who it seems that others are always respectful to, and they speak to them in a kind of pleasant manner. Well, this is taught to be the consequence of you yourself in previous lives of having pleasant speech, speaking nicely to others. We all agree that it's important to be polite, and you should try your best always to be polite to others and not to look down on others, and especially not to insult them or try to hurt them through your negative speech. The last of the negativities associated with speech is the negativity of kind of meaningless chatter. So we do a lot of this, right? We gossip, etc., and we don't say meaningful things. We spend a lot of our time with this. And the consequence of that is that people will see you to be flippant. Those people who kind of chit-chat a lot don't get a lot of respect, right? We don't see them to be kind of important. And I experienced this myself, having practiced silence and retreat a lot. Then people kind of get used to you not saying anything. You're seen to be kind of strong and silent, I guess is what we call it. But because of that, when you do speak, then people listen to you very carefully. You know, they see there to be great weight in your words. When I was in retreat in Erin, Island Erin, then I practiced silence for 3 years, and quite strictly. I think for 1 year I didn't say a single word. And I can see the results of that even in this lifetime. So the results in future lifetimes must be very powerful. And so don't be flippant. I mean, it's a real danger in the modern era because we have so much social media, etc. And in the past, then people used to talk over the garden wall, right? They spent a lot of time gossiping. And we're always taught that this is a bad thing to do. But these days it's much worse because we have telephones, and social media, and the internet, and we can spend all day long just engaging in completely meaningless activities, this kind of social gossip. So try to be meaningful, and to be meaningful means to speak the truth, and also to speak the truth about the spiritual path. So to teach the Dharma is the kind of highest form of meaningful speech. And now we come to the negativities of mind. And what are these negative experiences that will arise as a consequence of having a covetous mind? The result of that is that we will never be satisfied. And as I said before many times, and the Buddha taught, one should be easily satisfied and of few desires. So this is kind of the opposite of this. If we're covetous of the things of others, then we never have this feeling of satisfaction. We kind of feel like we're always working and we can never afford what we want. If we go on holiday, it never lives up to our expectations. The things we buy, the food we eat, doesn't satisfy us. And this is a result of being covetous. One should rejoice when other people get what they need. And as a result of that, we too, in future lives, will get the things that we need and we desire, instead of always feeling like we're somehow falling short. The second negativity is this malicious mind. And as I said, then what we're aiming for in the Buddha Dharma, especially in the Mahayana, is to have this benevolent mind, this bodhicitta, loving compassion for all beings, right? And so this experience that is similar to the cause associated with this malicious mind is we will always feel like people have ill intention towards us. So we have this kind of suspiciousness in our mind. And not only that, we will actually experience hardships because of our own malicious way of thinking. But ultimately, what we need on the spiritual path is the exact opposite of a malicious mind. We need this very kind of benevolent and loving and caring mind, this wish for all others to experience happiness and be free of suffering. And finally, then there is this experience that arises on the basis of having this negative virtue of mind that is wrong view. And by holding on to our wrong views, and in future times, we experience this kind of mistaken assumptions, misconceptions, getting things the wrong way. But also, again, as I said, ultimately what we need is this view that is free from the two extremes, right? And it is this correct view itself, this correct mental abiding, that is the final state of awakening itself. The first of these is experiences that are similar to cause. That means, if we kill, then we have a short life. We have experiences that are kind of similar to the negativities that we engaged in. The second is the actions that are similar to the cause. And that means, for example, if we are used to killing in this lifetime, then in future lifetimes we'll have this natural desire to kill. We'll like killing. For example, some people really like hunting and fishing, right? They get a great kick out of that. And that's a sign that in previous lifetimes, then they were like a butcher or something like that. And, some young children, for example, when they're very young, like harming insects, they'll pull the legs off spiders and things like that. That's really horrible. Whereas other children get really upset if you ever harm any kind of animal. They're very loving towards animals. So these things are signs of how we were in the past. Really, this is the key point. What we need to do is we need to habituate ourselves to the positive. And we have to decondition ourselves to the negative. As the Buddha taught, there is no other Dharma than this. Avoid all non-virtue. Practice only virtue. And thoroughly tame your mind. And this is really what this is all about. when it comes to karma, cause and effect. We have to develop good habits. And as I said before, it's difficult to develop good habits and it's easy to develop bad habits. Not only that, then it is very difficult to get rid of bad habits, and it's very easy to lose our good habits. For example, we might be an alcoholic and then we take the 12 steps, we go to Alcoholics Anonymous, and based on that we're able to sort of overcome our addiction. But 100%, if we start associating with our friends who like drinking again, then it's very easy for us to fall back into our addiction. So these kind of good habits are very easy to break, and bad habits are very difficult to break. And this is what it's about when it comes to karma, cause and effect. So by conditioning ourselves to negativity in the here and now, that means we're more likely to act in a negative way in the future. For example, once you start lying, then you've got to tell another lie to cover up the first lie, right? And then that way you just start lying more and more and more. For example, if you steal, once you've done it once, it's much easier to do that again and again. And likewise, if your job is in an abattoir and you have to kill animals, then you're not going to think very much about killing. Whereas at one point, you might have seen it difficult to take the life of an animal. Once you've done it once, it becomes easier to do it again. And we see this with people who are sort of mass murderers. They're always going to reoffend. Once they've done it once, then they get the habit. And so karma, cause and effect is very much about habit, but primarily it's about the habitual tendencies of mind, habitual way of thinking. If we see certain things to be negative, we will avoid them. If we see them to be positive, we will engage in them. So this mental conditioning is the most important of all of these kind of acts, these karmic acts. So that's about all I want to say on this topic today. We're going out later to drive around Iceland a little bit, and the days are very short. But if the weather's good enough and I'm able to, then I will try to release another video, some just kind of general thoughts and ideas that I have. So until next time, then, see you later.